welcome to gentle yoga, morning gentle yoga. The light is starting to change as we're getting later in the year, and so it's possible that I'm a little glowy because of the light behind me, so hopefully you'll be able to see okay. But let me know if that's not the case. So we're gonna start lying down. We're gonna eventually use a strap or something like a strap to hold onto our foot. So if you have a yoga strap handy, you can get it and put it nearby. If you don't have a yoga strap, you can use anything that will extend the length of your arm. I've used a dish towel, a scarf, dog leashes work kind of good because they have a loop in them. So just anything that will extend your, a towel, anything that you can find that'll extend your arm, that will work. And then if you like, you can just simply lay down on the floor and, peacefully lay there. Lie there. In any case, or you could put something under your upper back. So I'm going to use this pillow so that it kind of elevates my back a little bit, gives me a little bit of a shoulder opener. You could also do that same thing with a folded blanket. So the blanket can go under your back. I'm going to use the blanket under my legs, and I'll show you why in just a second. So, coming around, I'm going to position myself on the pillow. Now this pillow is nice and long, which is what I like about it, so I have plenty of room for my head. But if you have just like a throw pillow, you can use two of them, or a pillow and a blanket in combination. So I just want to try to find the spot where it feels like I have the right amount of curve for my low back. So for me, usually that means that the pillow should be up closer to the middle of my back and leave a little space. But for some people, it'll feel better if the pillow is quite close, or the end of the blanket is quite close to the hips. Now, I'm going to bring this blanket up close to the edge of my hips because I'm going to do this situation with my legs where my feet are together and my knees are open, little butterfly shape. You can also have your legs completely out straight. That feels kind of nice too. Or you can use this position, which is called constructive rest, which is feet on the floor with the knees up. So pick one of those options for yourself. And if you need a little, just need to fiddle with your support, you can, so that you can find just the right space and figure out like how far out should the arms go. Should they be closer or a little further away? And for the first even a whole minute, for me it's just test it out, maybe readjust, test again. And then once you find the spot where, it feels like you can relax a little bit better, stop there and just let go. So I'm letting the shoulder relax as best I can. I'm taking nice deep breaths. Take about 3 more breaths or so here. first thing I'm going to change as I exhale is I'm going to bring my knees together and just slip this blanket out from under me. And then the second thing is going to be taking this support out from underneath my upper back. And then coming back onto the floor here, I can just experience the sort of aftermath, results of having had my upper back, kind of up on that pillow, and it's almost like an impression left behind. Like it still feels like the pillow is under there at first, and then as my back sort of softens, it sort of feels like it spreads out and gets a little bit wider and a little bit more spacious. So it just feels really nice. So with that, I'm going to keep going a little bit along this line and keep working with the shoulders. So we just need to make sure that you can get your arms all the way over your head. And then put your feet on the floor so that it feels comfortable to your hips and your low back. And we're going to start with reaching down. So the arms are beside us, pinkies down, thumbs up. Reach down, almost like you're trying to grab your ankles, and then keep reaching as you lift your arms up. And then here, now I'm starting to feel like I'm trying to lift all the way up off the floor. And then however high your arms will go, if they'll go all the way to the point where the thumbs touch the floor, fine, but if not, don't worry about that. Just stop at the point that feels like you should stop. And then we're just going to come all the way back until the arms reach all the way down. So we're going to do that twice more, stretching the whole range of motion as far as we can into that space. And feel how different muscles in the shoulder and the arm have to work to make this happen. Keep going. Last one. Reaching out. Right here where my triceps start to kick on because I'm resisting gravity pulling the arms down. And then as you come back, we're going to stop when the arms get just about exactly over the chest. And then we're going to take ourselves over to the one side. So I'm going to roll to my right first. And here it's helpful to have something under the head, so I'll use this yoga block. Now I just need to make sure I've got a full range of motion, and I don't. So I'm going to scoot down just a little bit, so that I don't smack any furnishings with my arms. We're going to take the arm around. Now when we get to this point where the arm is about shoulder height, there's an opportunity for pinching the nerves right here in the shoulders. So we're just going to be really careful as we finish that range of motion. And if your shoulder is particularly sensitive, you can stop a little bit higher and just come all the way straight across without sweeping the rest of that circle. So reaching out through the arm, and again, being a little bit softer there as we hit the vulnerable spots. Kind of working my torso with my arm at that point. Stretching out. We're going to do that twice more. Oh, my arm's getting a little longer apparently because I just touched the furniture and I wasn't before. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I like that idea. So once we get all the way around, we're going to take this halfway now. We're going to go all the way around with the whole upper back. So now we're in a bit of a twist, and you could take your blanket or your pillow or a yoga block, whatever you've got handy if you want, and add a little extra support underneath. And then I'm going to take this top leg and drape it around. So I get a little bit more kind of stretchiness on this outer hip. So we're going to keep working with this left leg. So that's the one that's up on top. If for whatever reason yours is backwards, don't worry about it. Just whatever leg's on top, you're going to work with that leg. Oh. Sometimes the left-right thing gets a little screwed up. I do it all the time. We'll just work with one leg. That's okay. One leg at a time. We're going to stay for about 4 more breaths or so with this twist. this is where I'm going to need the strap. So I'm going to put that within easy reach. I'm going to take this left leg, bring it back to the center. Now before I go anywhere, I'm just going to shake out my left arm a little bit, and then I'm going to hug this left leg in and let my right leg rest. Spin your left foot in circles. Go the other direction. Oh, it feels nice. And then we're going to point and flex the foot. We get the ankle joint moving in all kinds of different directions and with different intensities. I'm also trying to spread my toes out and squish them together. All right, so now I'm going to wrap this strap around the ball of my foot. And I think I have a loop in mind, so I'm going to use the loop. But if you don't have a loop, you can just, layer the ends over and hold on to both ends. So there's lots of different ways to hold on to the strap. You can hold the loop with your hand. You can wrap the strap around. You can hold on to both ends. The strap is long enough that I can put it underneath my upper back, and then I can mostly go hands-free and just let this work. Now, if it feels like you're pulling too hard on your hamstrings, take your leg a little further away if you can. If that's not possible, you can certainly bend the knee. You actually will find if the leg is a little straighter and you just let it go further away from you, that you'll get a more even distribution of the stretch through the thigh there, as opposed to like bending at the knee can shift more of the intensity to the sit bone. So if the sit bone is not the issue, but the back of the knee is really tender, bending the knee might feel fine. If it's the fact that it's pulling at the end of the sit bone, maybe keep the leg straighter and go a little farther away from yourself. Now, we're going to stay here for like another 45 seconds or so. You can turn the toes out or in a little, kind of rotating that leg if that helps. Like sometimes one side is a little more sensitive than the other, so you can rotate it so you get to the less sensitive side. Take a nice big inhale, and as we exhale, we're going out to the side here. Now I'm going to wind up running into furniture, so I'm going to turn just a little bit. There we go. Sometimes this is a little intense, like the inner thigh can be pretty tender, so I often will take either a blanket or a block and put it under the edge of my hip so that I've got a little place for the leg to land, in addition to the support the strap is providing. So you can add a little extra support, just build up some pillows or a folded blanket right under the edge of the hip, if you like to give yourself that little bit of extra support. And so we're kind of letting this inner thigh area, the adductors, get a little extra love. If it feels nice. If it doesn't feel nice, then it's probably not love. You should back off a little bit. Taking nice deep breaths, yogis. Stay for like another 4 or 5 breaths. And then we'll be done with this side. Take a nice big inhale. Now, rather than bring the leg back to the center, what I'm going to do is slip my block out, and I am going to bend that knee carefully, take the strap off, and then I'm just going to carry on going all the way over onto this side, because we're going to do our little shoulder work over here. So I just need to make sure I'm not going to smack any furniture. Okay, so you've got a nice range of motion. Okay, so laying on the side, reaching out through that arm, stretching all the way over. And again, this is the place where it gets a little precarious. So be kind to your shoulder, reaching out and coming back. Let's do 2 more of them. Starting to feel some nice sensations. And this is the one where we're going to come all the way around and just keep going until it turns into a twist. And again, you can add support as you like. So we adjust for a nice stretch through the chest and a nice stretch through this outer hip. And then not too much, just the right amount. There's a lot of sunlight in my eyeballs. I can't do anything about that, but we can breathe nice and deep. That I can do. Stay for just a couple more breaths here. Oh. Now, same idea. So when I come back, I'm gonna take this top leg, let's shake out this arm, and then when I feel complete with that, then I'm grabbing my leg. So you can do the same thing. However much movement you need first, and then once you're hanging onto your leg, you're going to spin your foot in circles. I like to do a few, like anywhere between 10 and 15 circles in each direction. You can change it up and do however many you like to do. I like to do it enough that I start to feel a little bit of fatigue in the calf muscles. And then pointing and flexing. Oh, that's my favorite part. So this is the point where we're going to once again use the strap. So however is appropriate for you, given whatever props you have available to you. And then we'll find and stretch in the hamstrings. alter it a little bit by rotating the leg. The leg can go further away or come closer to you. You can bend the knee just to kind of notice where the pressure lives and see how that manages the pressure, because you can always take the leg further away instead. And then just taking, nice, smooth, deep breaths, being present. We're hanging out with the pose for about another minute or so, just shy of that. Okay, ready? We're going out to the side. Oh, that might have been a little longer than a minute. Not that much though. And so again, I've placed this block here underneath my leg to give myself a little bit of extra support. So that inner thigh stretch can be quite spicy. I like having that little extra bit of support. Just taking deep, smooth breaths. Hanging out here for a bit longer. I'm just rotating my leg just a little bit this way, a little bit that way. I'm looking to see if there's any more interesting little places to get to, or if it's too spicy. We're going to take about 4 more breaths. Okay, so I'm going to bend that knee, and this time I'm coming back to the center. Last time we went all the way to the other side, but we're done there. So once you're ready, you can put the leg down on the ground. I like to just pause for a second, and then after a few breaths, kind of start to move. You could do little windshield wiper moves like I'm doing with the legs, or bring your knees into your chest. Give yourself a little rock on the whole back. You can just set your strap off to the side. It's possible that we'll use it again in a moment, but it's also possible you will not need it. At some point, we're going to do one more really long stretch here. Now, we're going to either come up to a seated position, and you can do some seated cat-cows with me, or if you'd prefer, you can come up to all fours and do a more, the more traditional cat shapes. That way. Either one will get us where we want to be. You just may have a preference. And if you like, you can sit up on the edge of a blanket once you're here, so that you have a little bit more support for the hips. All right. I need to secure my hair, and then I will join you guys. All right, so to do the little seated cat-cows, I just kind of bow backward and then push the ribs forward, and that's it. It's really simple. Sometimes I like to do these because they're just a little different than the kneeling ones, so I move in a different way. It kind of keeps my body a little surprised about what we're up to. Oh. And then I can also kind of move the ribs side to side, and you can do that kneeling as well, where you kind of look over one side and then look over the other side. So kind of moving the ribs a little different. And then I'm going to kind of put it all together by doing a little circle. Some people call these Sufi Rolls, which I think is funny because it makes me think of sushi. Which is ridiculous. It's sort of like when people tell me that the word yoga makes them think of yogurt. So be it. Or go in the other direction. So whatever you're accustomed to, I think. So kind of pushing the ribs out front over to the side, around the back and out to the side. Okay, so when I get around to the back, I'm going to pause there and sit up a little bit taller. So hopefully we've given our shoulders a little bit of love today so far, and we've done a little bit of movement here now for the back. And so we're just going to do one more thing, which is the neck. So sit in a comfortable position, whether that's kneeling or sitting on a cushion, or you could even sit in a chair if you like. We're going to drop the chin. Now, what we're going to try to do is just kind of rotate over one shoulder so that we sort of feel the movement pattern between this stretch and one that comes up kind of the back of the neck. And then there's some space in between. But if it feels pinchy under here, rather than try to get your ear to the shoulder, go more on a diagonal and see if you can find the one kind of a little bit more lifted, see if that helps. So it really is just a matter of what's right for your own neck. And I'm trying really hard not to let myself, as my head rolls forward, my body wants to carry forward with it. So I'm trying to resist that urge. Stay upright. Okay, so now we're going to pause. So I'm going to come back so that I feel this stretch along the front between the collarbone and the skull, just behind the jaw. I'm going to reach the collarbone out a little bit more to the side, try to take it down and away from my jawbone. And that's going to give me a nice stretch along that space. I might have to adjust the head just a little bit. And one more breath. And then I'm going to switch it to the shoulder blade. So I'm going to pull my shoulder blade down and then drop my head a little more to the diagonal forward so that I get to this muscle that's right here at the back. Connects the shoulder blade to the skull. And again, sometimes it helps me to turn the head a little bit. Try to find the spot, make sure I'm sitting up tall. Now, I'm going to get out of this by bringing my shoulder around, giving it a little jiggle, and letting my head kind of float back up to the center. Now, for me, the real question is, can I feel a difference? And often I feel like the shoulders drop down a little bit compared to this side. If I measured them, I don't know that they would be that different. But it feels different. Having just released a little bit the neck. So again, I'm going to do that same thing. Now, it doesn't feel crunchy to me, so I'm going to just let my head kind of loll around the shoulder. But again, you can have the head more lifted, a little more upright. I just want to start to notice, like, where do I notice the stretch here? And where do I notice the stretch here? So it'll give me some informed positioning for the head. So when we're holding the stretch, we'll know where to put it. Okay, so I'm going to do one more little back and forth, And then I'm going to come back and aim for this stretch that goes from the collarbone to just up here by the jaw. And again, moving the head a little bit forward or back, up and down, can help you find the right spot. Oh, I'm definitely in the right spot. We're breathing nice and deep. Okay, I'm going to take the head the other way. Oh, pardon me. So I'm going to go for this stretch up the side of the neck. Sometimes, especially if the neck has been positioned in a strange way, either sleeping or because we have tight muscles, sometimes as we start to release those muscles, the nervous system actually stimulates either yawning or hypersalivation. I'm having both. So because the nerves that control those are also coming out of this area of the neck. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. Because I'm stimulating those nerves. So again, I'm trying to get to this little space back here in the back. Shoulder blade down. I'm taking a couple more breaths here. You can do a few more if you like or come out early. And then I'm going to bring this all back to the center. All right. Oh my gosh, pardon me. All right, so my neck feels a little more even, so I think we're good there. Now, we're going to take the legs out into a wide-ish V position. I'm going to give you some options, but again, sitting up on the edge of a blanket can be really useful, or you can, I hyperextend through the knees, so you can also try putting a little support behind the knees. And this is very good for me, because that's my issue. Okay. But for some of us, elevating the hips is going to be better. Now, I'm being a little bit conservative. I'm not going as far out as my hip joints allow. I'm just going to the point where I feel the sensation here in the inner thigh. And that keeps me from doing any damage to my hip joint. And at the age of 51, I want to make them last as long as possible. So, like in my 20s, I was a little more reckless, but now I'm not so reckless. So I'm going to pick a side and rotate towards that leg, and that's going to be it to start with. I'm just doing a twist, and what I'm playing with or noticing is where does the point of the twist start to impact my pelvis, and this hip comes up off the floor. So I'm going to try to keep that hip nice and steady so that I make the spine do the twist and not the pelvis. It's okay for the pelvis to help, but if I really want to isolate the twist into my back, then it's helpful to notice this. And when we did the twist earlier, laying on the ground, that is a little, just not the same level of awareness. The sit bones weren't on the ground. We can do different things with the spine. So we're just coming back around to that notion, back around to a similar pose with a different way of experiencing the body. So now I can experience gravity's pull down into the floor with my sit bones and play with the amount of twist I can get in my upper back right before that point where the pelvis helps. Now, one thing to just know, again, I would recommend just backing off of the twist if it feels like your pelvis is really trying to help you a lot. But just for future reference, if you have some sacroiliac joint issues, it's perfectly fine to let the pelvis come with you into a twist. It'll minimize the amount of issue you might get there. Again, there's two options: back off so that it really is just in the upper part of the spine, or allow for some of that movement. It might depend on the pose as to which choice you would make, but it's just something to know. A lot of times we have these rules in yoga, like you should do it this way, but the rules need to be modified in certain instances, and that is one. So now I'm going to come away from the twist just a little bit, but I'm not totally out of it, because I'm going to fold over this front leg. Now this is where you could, if you wanted to, bend this knee. So if you don't want to keep the V for the same amount of time, you can go ahead and bend that knee. And depending on how far forward your pelvis moves, you might wind up with your torso at a higher trajectory to keep the spine a little bit on the longer side. And then, so I'm trying to fold from my pelvis and let everything else kind of stay a little bit more lined up. And again, that's just a choice I'm making. You can make a choice to let your upper back round over. I'm making the choice to stay a little bit higher today. And then I'm going to kind of play with how much energy I'm putting in my leg here. So if I point the toes versus flex, if I rotate this leg so the toes point more up versus letting the toes point slightly to the diagonal, all of that is changing my experience of the pose. And so what we're doing here is just kind of playing around. So right now I'm trying to lift my kneecap up so I'm engaging my quads a little more. And that changes the way my hamstrings feel. And so we're using the yoga pose to sort of get to know the body and to, without being fidgety, to kind of play with the sensation or experience the sensations that are available here. I'm going to do about 3 more breaths. Now we're going to inhale the weight. The next time it's time to inhale, come all the way up. And just for a moment, I'm going to lean back, bend the knees, and just kind of give everything a little shimmy, a little shake out. And that just gives me a chance to sort of like erasing the chalkboard a little bit, like you're starting over fresh, so that when I come back to here and let my body relax, I can notice it's a little easier for me to experience, like, is there a difference between this hip and this hip, this leg and this leg, the way my spine feels. So I find that really interesting because every pose has multiple layers of impact. There's what was happening in my diaphragm, what was happening as my lungs tried to expand, the side, the ribs responding to the breath, and then of course all of the tugs that the pose itself does. So all of that provides a lot of data, sensation, feedback. Okay, so we're going to do that whole thing again, but on the other side. So I'm just finding that spot where both my sit bones feel like they're evenly pressed into the floor, rotating right to the point where I start to feel my pelvis wanting to turn, and then just backing off just a notch from that. And I notice immediately that I can twist a lot more to my left than I can to my right. There's just the tiniest little scoliosis curve in my spine. It's so tiny. It does not mostly doesn't impact me, but it does impact this one thing, which is that I can twist a little bit less in one direction than the other. I can side bend a little bit less in one direction than the other. But some people have a more dramatic or a more pronounced curve, and you may notice that one side doesn't twist very much at all. So you just twist as much as your body says is cool, working with whatever your particular predisposition may or may not be the right word I'm looking for, but whatever your set point is, however you normally exist in the world without all the funky yoga poses. And so, my upper back is willing to go around just a tiny bit more now that we've been here a while. Things are realigning. But again, I'm just noticing, I'm noticing the tug or the rootedness of the sit bone. I'm noticing how tall I'm keeping myself. Like, am I starting to hunch? Or can I keep myself a little taller? I've got short arms, so I've got my arms positioned so I can just kind of let the arms fall wherever they're landing. And that gives me a chance to play with my shoulder blades a little bit as well. So we're here. Breathing. So we're going to take about 2 more deep breaths. And then letting the twist go and then folding over the leg. Again, you could bend this knee if you would like. So this is a little different. I have to kind of back up just a little bit for a second. As I'm noticing just a little resistance. And as that resistance starts to melt, then I can go in a little bit. And this is, you know, what we're looking for as we're developing sensitivity and awareness. Apparently I'm sleepy. Started the yawning with the neck movement. It's not stopped yet. They say yawns are can be a little bit contagious, and what the thought is, one of the studies I read about was that they looked at like when people yawn because other people are yawning, and if you have a sense of affection or a sense of connection to the person who's yawning, it will also make you want to yawn. But if you don't feel that way about that person, then it won't. So, I'm sorry if you like me and I'm making you yawn, and if you don't like me and you're not yawning, that's cool, carry on. Oh goodness, I don't know if that's true or not, but I've made myself yawn more. It's more contagious for me. All right, so I'm feeling like finally my body is kind of letting me do a little bit more depth here. So I'm going to take up that slack, and we're going to do about 3 more deep breaths. Ooh. Again, I'm keeping a little bit of length here, trying to move mostly from my pelvis. And then coming on back up, I'm going to lean back. Oh, bend the legs. Do a little bit of movement. Oh, goodness. Now, we're going to come back to a shape, and we're going to bend down the center. I'm going to come back to that wide leg shape, but you could do this shape, this butterfly, or you could bring the legs closer together if that would be a better setup for you. So for me, I like this one. This one's fine. Everybody genetically has slightly different range of motion in the pelvis, and for some of us, putting the legs wide actually pushes the hip socket backwards and makes the pelvis want to lean back instead of forward. So if that's you, change the legs, and often that'll change the lever. Or you can also like elevate the hips. That helps. You like sitting up on the edge of a block or sitting up on a folded blanket or a pillow. That can be useful. There's probably a few other things you can try just to change the relationship between the floor and the height of the pelvis, or the way the spine wants to move. You can stay a little more upright instead of leaning forward. So you can play with these shapes. This one is a comfortable shape for me, so I like it, but work with what you got. I spent enough time in my younger life wishing that I had a different body. I have come to accept that this is the one that I have to work with, so I might as well just get into it. That took a while. And again, I'm sort of playing with the pose. I'm kind of shifting the weight around a little bit, adjusting whether my toes are up or out, the legs are soft or active. And we'll take about 3 more breaths, just kind of playing with the spots that are interesting to you. And then we're going to come all the way up. All right, yogis. Bend the knees. Give yourself or straighten the legs out, whichever one is the opposite of what you're just up to. And then I'm going to kind of smooth this blanket out. So we're going to do an inverted posture. Now the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the appropriate inversion for me given the space that I am currently in? So if you have an empty wall space and you're fond of legs up the wall, it's a fantastic inversion. It's a partial inversion if you keep your hips level with your head. If you put something like a pillow or a block or a folded blanket under the hips and elevate the hips a bit, then it becomes a full inversion. And it is a little more on the gentle side of things. For postures that get the hips above the head, it's a more gentle version of that. Now you can do an even more gentle version of that if you've got a couch nearby or a chair. Slide your butt right up against the edge, right up against the bottom of that, and throw your legs up and over the couch or the chair, and that will give you a partial inversion. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of build a little bit of support for myself with props. So I'm going to use this blanket, fold it up, and then underneath my pelvis, and then I'm going to take my legs in the air, and I'll use the blocks if I want to as footrest, right? So I could just put my feet on the blocks, or I might just decide I want my legs all the way up in the air. So I'm going to kind of experiment as I go here. So what I've done with this blanket is it's been folded 3 times, essentially, in half, the longest direction, and then one more time in the longest direction, and then one more time in the longest direction, and then I'm going to fold it into thirds. Now your blanket might be different than mine. This is a wool blanket that's about the size of like the top of a queen size bed. So it's not a huge blanket. If you've got a big blanket or a quilt, you might wind up folding yours a bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna lie down on my back and so that my feet can get close to these blocks. So essentially, I'm just gonna fiddle, there we go, until I'm there. And then I'm gonna lift my hips and bring this blanket up underneath me. Now, I am putting the rounded, folded edge of the blanket. This is the empty edge where all the little frayed bits are, all the little ends. The ends are going towards my feet, and this more smooth edge, I'm putting that right under the top of my sacrum. So I'm gonna lift my hips up, hopefully, lift my hips up and slide this guy under. Might have to do a little smoothing, so that there's a much more even pressure right here at the top of my sacrum. And this is not very high, but it is an inversion. My hips are higher than my head. So I can start by just resting my feet on these blocks, and now my legs are up, or this is my favorite version, just to let the legs just come straight up in the air. So this is a little bit more work, like I have to use my core to hold my legs up, but it's kind of fun. And it's like a shoulder stand, but with support. So there's not a lot of pressure on my neck. There's not a lot of pressure on my upper back, which partially the shoulder stand for me can be a little bit tricky on the neck. I have a short neck and rather pronounced kind of C7 vertebral transition. And so sometimes that feels just a little too much. And this is a really nice alternative. I'm shaking my legs from time to time. That helps the lymphatic fluid move around. So sometimes our bodies are designed by nature for us to be jiggly. So if you're the kind of person that's always a little fidgety, that might be why. But the idea would be that we would sort of move around a lot and jiggle and maybe fall down or climb up into trees and hang upside down or something. We would do something. Apparently the best exercise for a lymphatic system is jumping up and down on a trampoline, but I don't do that very often. So this is the next best thing, is to just kind of hang out with your legs in the air, and then this little jiggle is helpful. Movement, fluid movement, jiggly movement, dancing, those are helpful things for the lymph system in the body. Gives you permission to dance around your kitchen when nobody's watching you. So we're gonna stay like this for like another 2 minutes. So again, this is why the legs up the wall could be useful, because it's a little bit of work for my core to hold my legs up like this. I'm having fun, so it's not problematic. But if you wanted something a little more restful, you could put yourself close enough to the furniture or the wall to rest your legs. And then you will be. Or I could rest my feet on the blocks if I get tired of this upside downness. Now, what's great about inversions is they seem to have the impact. They have a weird impact on our stress hormone levels. So there was some interesting series of studies that were done in India where they swabbed people's mouths and tested their stress hormone level before they did inverted postures and then after. And they tested a bunch of different inverted postures, everything from handstands to legs up the wall, all kinds of things. Anytime your butt was higher than your head or your legs were higher than your head. And all of them had a positive impact. Now, what happened was there was kind of an average, like everyone, well, not everyone, but the vast majority of people experienced some drop in the level of stress hormone in their bloodstream. So they swabbed again at the end of the inversion. But some people experienced as much as 20% reduction, or pretty close to that. It was like 90-something%. But that's kind of crazy. That's a lot, actually. So if it does anything to help with that, to me, it's worth it. Okay, you ready? So we're going to take the legs down. So all I'm going to do first is I'm going to bend my knees, and I'm going back to the blocks. So if you were doing legs up the wall, just bend your knees. So you can either rest your feet on the wall or sit cross-legged. That's my favorite. And if you're on the couch or the chair, you're probably okay where you are. You can bring your knees into your chest. I'm giving myself this little wobble through the hips. And then some people report that inversions are helpful for just feelings of anxiety. So there might be some impact also on the nervous system, or maybe there's a chemical relationship there because of the stress hormone levels. I don't know, but I find it interesting. So I'm experimenting. See if I notice a difference. So I've got to get this blanket out from under my hips. So I'm going to lift my hips up again, slide the blanket out, and then I'm going to give myself just a little massage right where that was. So if you had something under your hips, a blanket or even a yoga block, you can do something similar. I'm then going to put this blanket underneath my legs because it's time for Shavasana, yogis. Now, Shavasana is the final pose. It's corpse pose, and sometimes people are tempted to skip this. They don't think it has any value. But I am here to tell you that this pose is all about your nervous system. That's what this pose is for. It's not for you, it's for your nervous system. If you consider yourself separate from that. So you're letting the body completely relax, nothing tugging. So if it feels like there's a tug on your low back, put something under your legs or put your feet on the floor. Get your shoulder blades snuggled under you in such a way that your arms can relax. Adjust your head, like you might need some head support so that your neck and shoulders can relax. And then with nothing pulling on the body, allowing the body to completely let go is a great way to make sure that we're sliding completely into that parasympathetic nervous system. So we have sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that gets us out of danger. And sometimes as we're doing yoga poses, because we're tugging on our tissue in ways that the nervous system might be a little concerned about, those hamstring stretches might be a little intense, we actually get like the tiniest bit of vigilance in the nervous system. So this pose is to allow that to completely recede and to let the parasympathetic nervous system take over. And it's that nervous system that is helpful for digesting food. So if we're in anxious mind states a lot, we often have kind of poor digestion or poor absorption of nutrients. So we're giving ourselves a few minutes to let that part of our nervous system that allows us to digest food, to relax and rest, to be dominant. So we're going to take a moment just to notice the breath. We're not going anywhere yet. And try to feel, can you feel the breath down to your toes? Take a breath so deep you can feel it to the tips of your toes and the tips of your fingers. Maybe. And then let it go with an ah. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Give your wrist and ankles a little movement. Ooh, we're going to stretch everything out. Bring your knees in. Give yourself a little back massage. Now, we're going to bring ourselves to a seated position and then we will say goodbye to each other with a big breath. If you want to stay in Shavasana, I'm not going to stop you, but you're at your house, you can do what you want. But for now, we'll end our class. Take a nice big inhale and a big deep sigh. Namaste, yogis. Thank you for joining me today for a little gentle yoga on the mat. Have a great day.